so I need to do lower thirds. Oh, we're live. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the break. What an exciting day of panels so far. We were excited so much from everything we've heard from our friends from the United Kingdom. Also, our diversity panel was amazing. We had so much fun learning about screenwriting from the great Karen Hall. We have had so many amazing sessions, and we're not through yet. The best is always yet to come, but the past was pretty great. It's been such an amazing day so far. So thank you. Thank all of you so much for doing this, for tuning in, for staying with us through the series of panels at the 11th Miami Media and Film Market Virtual Edition. I am so pleased and happy to present a new speaker to the MMFM family. His name is Jay Roewe. He is the Senior Vice President of Production for HBO and HBO Max, doing so much great work for such a great company and an amazing human being as well that we're going to learn a lot about. So without further ado, let's bring on our good friend, Jay Roewe. Jay, how are you, sir?
Very good, Jose. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's been a busy day, but very exciting here at the virtual conference.
Well, I'm very happy that it's virtual because it's a little challenging to travel around, but I think that's one of the great benefits of COVID is being able to do things like that. And I think it's been one. To try. I'm one of those people like I look for the positive in things, and so this is one of the positive things from COVID is being able to kind of connect like this with people all around the world right now.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. This has definitely been one of those what we call silver linings over the last year and a half. Is how, and it's funny because the last panel was about diversity and inclusivity. And we were actually speaking with a filmmaker, and I know it's a little bit off topic, and we're going to get into you for a second, but someone that was affected by sickle cell at birth. And so she wasn't able to attend a lot of live conferences and events. But now in this new virtual meeting, she's become an award-winning filmmaker. She's launched a program with Slam Dance Unstoppable, highlighting disabled filmmakers and their stories, all because now she just has more access to the world that we're all living in day to day.
Well, there's no question, and I think as in any challenge, I really believe that when there's a challenge that presented to you, creative people, really true creative people, look for the silver lining or see it, allow that to kind of things to evolve in front of you. And I remember because one of the things of my job is I get involved in a lot of special projects across all of HBO Max, and so I was given the task of sitting on the white paper, which was basically this industry-wide document that was put together even before the return to work agreement with the unions. And so I was reaching out to other people around the world. And at one point I was reading 45 different papers that had been put together in different countries. But I'd call up somebody in Asia. I'd call up somebody in Singapore. I'd call up somebody in Australia. And all of a sudden we were connected more than ever. And the technologies allowed us to do that. It was one of the things that right before, especially in my job, which we look at the productions that are going around the world, you had the sense that we were all connected, right? And that's what's happening in our industry. We're trying to, be these virtual platforms around the world right now. And COVID just kind of thrust us into the future. And so it's been utterly fascinating and we'll talk about this, in terms of your careers and opportunities and so on, that COVID has actually presented some really unique opportunities and tools, which we're just beginning to understand and use. And just like this being here today, for you all to embrace a virtual conference as opposed to being in person, this is the future and we're in it right now. And we're all trying to figure out what that really is, but it's some pretty amazing things that are coming out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to talk all about, the future and all the exciting things to come. But now, because this conversation in particular is about the journey, let's take a couple steps back. So tell us a little about yourself, where you're from and how you first kind of got into the business.
Yeah, I think the shorter version, if we want to delve into some of it, I think it's always helpful to kind of understand, because I truly believe that that by and large in this industry, that the journey is a long and winding road. There's some careers, some professions, you go to school, you get a degree, you go to the accounting firm, you go to legal firm or whatever. And it's a very linear kind of aspect of things, doctors and so on. But our business is not like that. maybe there's some aspects of it that are, but certainly my journey has been a long and winding road. And I think most people that have survived and gotten through and been any level of success would agree it's not straight ahead. You're finding and winding through new things. And so the short version of that journey, which I often tell people, and people that know me have heard bits and pieces of this before, but I grew up as a musician. My parents were amateur musicians. So I grew up playing music all the time. And so my whole view of the world is from a creative perspective of a musician, which is about people coming together, sometimes spontaneously, sometimes very rehearsed, and so on, and creating something that then you kind of put out into the world, sometimes in small situations, sometimes for larger groups. I actually had the opportunity in high school to travel around the world in a all-star jazz band, which was pretty eye-opening. But I got to the end of high school, and it's like, trying to figure out what do you do with the future. And the idea of being a professional musician, because where I grew up, which was in Wilmington, Delaware, all the professional musicians basically were school teachers or somebody that went to this far off land of Los Angeles or so on, and maybe they became a rock and roll star. And it was like, that seems, I don't relate to that. I think the other thing, honestly, I did have the opportunity to play with some really great musicians. I mean, super talented musicians. I remember doing a jazz workshop and all these guys from New York came down and they were just like, it's such another level. I just like, I'm never, I never saw myself. Now, maybe if I had applied myself, I could have achieved that, but it was just a little bit too much. So I decided I had great parents. Both my parents were teachers at one point. My mom was a full-time teacher. And so I went to actually end up at Boston University and did a communications. They had one of the top communication schools in the country at the time, still do. But these communication schools were these new kind of cutting edge things. And they had a television and film program. And for whatever reason, I got in as a television production major. I remember my mom had me experience a couple of small film sets in our neighborhood. I would go to these documentary crews. It was kind of cool what they were doing and so on. So nevertheless, I picked Boston University. They had a great music school because I want to keep the music going, but they had a very good film and television school. Plus, driving into Boston, I mean, it's one of the top schools in the world to go to school in, right? Because a lot of the universities and the youth and everything else, the energy is just amazing. And I respond to the energy of places. And so I got a great education there and worked in Boston. I freelanced in Boston for 5 years, mostly in news. The company I worked for, we did a lot of work for ABC News. I did World News Tonight. I would do Nightline feeds with this, that cameraman in Boston. And well, I was the guy at the other end of the camera. Wow. Zooming in. I'll never forget one time on Nightline. I'm talking. I got the director on the headset in New York City. He goes, "Zoom in." I've never been so nervous. I'm sitting here shaking. How many millions of people are watching this shot? It was a very steady zoom. I did a good zoom, but it was like it was kind of fun. You're 22 years old and your shots being shown around the country. Anyway, so I freelanced, did a lot of industrials, news, anything with E&G, video. That's incredible. Love working with people from New York and LA, but I loved working with people from New York and LA. And I got to the point working at this production company that it was like, well, at some point, and I would get around these people and I said, well, if you really want to make it, you need to go to New York or LA. And the New York and LA people I work with were by far, they're great people in Boston, but they were just like at another level. And they were world-class people. And I'll never forget one of the last shoots I did in Boston was with Barbara Walters, and she was interviewing Walter Cronkite. And there were these people that came in from LA, and they were cool. They knew what they were doing. They were just professionals. And I said, yeah, that's kind of, I'm interested in that, being that someday. Wow. So I packed up my bags, I drove across the country. And at the time, and this is back in the 80s, so I'm dating myself a little bit, but music videos were the thing. And MTV had just started. In fact, when MTV started, we did news pieces for MTV out of Boston, which was really cool. When went and hung out with Tom Schultz from Boston, and we're doing feeds from where Pat Metheny and Jay Giles had been doing things. So anything music I loved. Well, why not take my passion for music and put it together with my passion for film and television? So I came out here and I started producing music videos, and I did about 50 to 75 music videos over a period of 3 years. and I became David Fincher's line producer for music videos, which was pretty cool. Worked
Wow.
at a company called Propaganda Films, which is where Michael Bay came out of. So Michael Bay, David Fincher, pretty fascinating company to work for, and got involved with feature films. And so I had the opportunity to start doing feature films there. Got one of the most interesting films I got to do during that period of time was Truth or Dare with Madonna. So that was again taking my passion for music and television, put it together. And so it was fantastic. But I got to the point too where I was traveling around the world. I travel around the world, on doing television productions, was a great way to do things and get to stay in nice hotels and see the world. But it was like time to raise a family. And so I had done a couple shows in town, and my wife said, "Well, you know what? It'd be nice if you were hanging out." And so I've been offered a couple of other opportunities to run production. In fact, at Propaganda, they offered me the head of production position at Propaganda. And HBO, I had done some shows for HBO. I went to Russia with Billy Joel, produced Billy Joel live in Leningrad. I went
Wow.
to Russia with HBO and produced Billy Crystal Midnight Train to Moscow. I had done some films for HBO, and this head of production job came up, and I was like, maybe I'll try the studio side for a couple of years. I thought it would make me a better producer, and
Hmm.
lo and behold, I ended up at HBO. This was 20 years ago, at just the time when it was kind of beginning to burgeon into original production.
Wow.
And I'll never forget. Within a couple of weeks, I was sitting in a room with John Frankenheimer, because we were working on a film with John Frankenheimer, and he's telling John Frankenheimer stories. And it was just like, HBO became the place, and still to this day, where, people just come to us because they understand that we have a high degree of wanting to do the best possible work we possibly can.
Hmm.
And so the idea here is to support the creative process and support great filmmakers in any shape, manner, and form that we can. And
Hmm.
so most of us that work on the production side came out of the field. So, I mean, I was out in the field for 14 years, cameraman, sound man, line producing, music videos, feature films, concerts, all kinds of different formats from that standpoint. So got involved with some TV series. I did the pilot for Beverly Hills 90210. But what it became, and what we've created, I think, in the production department, is people that have a lot of world experience, and we try and bring that to everything that we do here. So
Hmm.
that's a little bit
Wow.
of that. We can delve into some of that, but that's the quick journey.
Right, but that's an incredible journey, and who would have thought, from jazz music to news broadcasting to producing music videos to then getting into production at HBO. And that there's a saying that I've used
Well,
before. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, I want to hear your saying, but my saying is, and I tell this to people, and people know me know this. My brother is a jazz musician, and my sister is an accountant, and so I have both. My brain can operate in both worlds. So I can go to the jazz world. In fact, people
Yeah.
that know me often, we'll have a meeting and I'll say, well, we're just jamming on a few ideas here. You got to kick things around, but then you have to take those ideas and you have to make them into a reality.
Hmm.
And that's about being incredibly detail oriented, incredibly focused, very passionate, and very driven. So,
Yeah.
the world in which we work, you got to be willing to think outside the box and be outside the box, but at other times you have to be super detailed and super focused. And so
Right.
I'm certainly have both worlds that way. But I'm sorry, you were going to say
No,
something. Sorry.
well,
Yep.
two things there. First, I think you just kind of defined this panel, like what is a producer, and I think you just explained that very well, right? Is someone that's able to balance that creative energy and instinct with something that's very business and analytical, right? And put that together in this sort of alchemy that we hope becomes something interesting, right?
Well, and I think that's a really interesting thing when you talk about that dynamic and what's happened in the TV industry, certainly in the last 5 years, and what we've seen over the last 10 years evolve, is this idea of, especially this content, this explosion of content, that it's become very, very big business, right? I mean, billions of dollars that these companies are spending on this stuff. And yet it's still a very creative process that at the end of the day, the content is that you're going through.
Mm.
And so in as much as when I was a line producer, I had to think that way, I think what's happened is that there are people, especially in production departments like ours, and now at every company, and in fact, people like myself that have this kind of this experience, we are in some ways some of the more valuable people that these companies are reaching out to, because we know how to take an idea, to take the concept of the television series and turn it into a reality.
Mm.
And so the skill set that goes along from a line producing standpoint of being able to operate within these large corporations now, and to be able to execute and help execute. I often said this when we would hire people early on, and still to this day, those of us in the production departments at all the studios, whether it be Netflix or Amazon or ABC or Paramount, we're really doing the job very much of what that line producer is doing out in the field. We just happen to be inside the corporate setting. And so a lot of what I often say to people is that our job is to be almost line producing that project inside of the corporate side. In other words,
Mm.
getting through the bureaucracy of the companies and so on and so forth, while the line producer is dealing with all of those bureaucratic and systematic, issues out there in the field. So
Mm.
we are joined with the producer. It's our department that's joined with the producers and the productions in the field. And that communication is so important for us to be able to support them and get behind them, and be there. So the real world experience is very helpful in jobs like mine and the other people around me, to have the experience of being on the set and understanding what it's like to be shooting at 4 a.m. in the morning, or what happens when your permit gets pulled, or a case in point with COVID, when you have to shut down for 2, 3, 4 months, right? And then
Mm.
put a production back together.
Mm.
And those of us in production, we have been the busiest we've ever been right through COVID. We never stopped working, right? We
Mm.
had to shut things down. Then
Right.
we had to figure out when we're going to come back up. Then we had to develop COVID protocols and systems right on top of everything else we were doing. So,
Mm.
which is kind of, that defines our job. There's problems that get presented to us every day. And it's those of us in the production department with the producers that have to solve those problems. And on any given day, you just never know. It's kind of the fun of it. You never know
Right.
what's happening. So
Right. Yeah. Obviously, nobody saw the last year and a half coming, but
no, exactly.
and
Yeah, and here's a perfect example of what I do, and it's about an active show that's going on. So I'm going to be a little bit sensitive. I can't really disclose totally what's going on,
mm,
but let's just say in a very major city where there are often a lot of demonstrations that go on. So you can kind of get to this. We've been working for months to be able to shoot, and we got a call this morning and said, well, the police said, even though you have the permit and everything else, the police said they can't help you out, so you're not going to be able to shoot this weekend.
wow.
Wait a minute, we've been planning for how many weeks and months and working with we get involved with the local film commissioners and local government people. I end up calling my friends at AT&T. I call for people at the MPA. So all of a sudden we got a mini little fire that we got to put out in 3 to 4 days. So that's just one thing that could show up on any given day on any of our desks. And you have to go from, I often say, corporate mode, where sometimes it's a little bit slow, to production mode. We got to solve this problem right now. And that's
Mm.
part of the fun. That's why I enjoy what I do. You just never know what you're going to walk into. At
Yeah,
the end of the day.
absolutely. But I think also, having had, as you mentioned earlier, that experience on the other side of producing in the field, I almost want to use an analogy, almost like a football game, right? Where you have your quarterback and you're the coach on the sidelines, but you're feeding them the plays and your guys are working together to score a touchdown, right? Ideally.
I think, and it's why in the sport, I love sports analogies, but the coaches that were players before they were coaches, there's definitely something to be said, because then you've been inside it. You know what it feels like. Look at Dave
Mm.
Roberts from the Dodgers and Mike Scioscia. I mean, these people who were great athletes, and then they became great coaches
Right.
because they understand the game. They also know how to talk to the athletes. I can
Right.
talk to a producer anywhere in the world, and it often happens where I have to get into their shoes. Like, well, tell me what your problem is. The
Mm.
issue is, okay, what can I do to help? Because I've
Right.
been there. I know what it's like. And I also know what it's like when you got 100 people or 150 people waiting because something isn't happening, and the pressure that you're under to make something happen in the field. So I think for those of us that do what I do, you have to be sensitive to the process and to what people are going through out in the field, because there's a lot, the day in and day out grinding of what a production is about.
Mm.
As so many of I mean, it's a lot of pressure when you're out there trying to make things happen,
Yeah.
much less be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, and every hour is costing you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of the fun part of our industry, but there's a lot of pressure that goes with it. So my job these days is to help support those people, as my whole department is here at HBO, and make the best product we possibly can.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that, you've kind of done a good job in terms of defining what you do as a production executive, right? Which is a little different, and for some of our audience members who are more on the creative side than a development executive, right? Who's really sitting in there with the writers and developing the stories. So kind of talk about that kind of chain of command and how.
Well, our job, the analogy I would use is when I was a line producer, my goal was to work hand in hand with the director and the creative people. And it was like, what's your vision? Okay. And I've got to go put a budget together for that vision. And then it's my job to deliver on that vision. Well, within the studio, it's a very similar relationship with the creative department. So they hand us a script. Sometimes you don't have a script, sometimes you just have an idea, but either you have a script
Right.
or at least some pitch documents or something to work with. And then it's our job to put a production plan together. I'll budget that. What do you think it's going to cost? And then work with them to say, is this how much money you want to spend? You don't want to spend that kind of money. Well, this is how we should approach things. And basically put a production plan together. And that's actually the fun part of my job right now. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But to work hand in hand in studio, the same way that as a line producer, I worked hand in hand with the director or the executive producer out in the field, right? We were intimately connected to given whatever amount of money we had to work with to make that vision real.
Right.
That's how we in the production department work with the creative department. What is it that you want? What are we trying to do? What are the challenges?
Right.
And to be completely in lockstep. So that is our goal, is to have the trust of them and to make the reality of that happen. What's been interesting and where my job has evolved to in the last few years is as the content, and when I started at HBO, we did 10 original movies a year. And there was a little bit of television on the side, but that was it, 10 movies a year.
Yeah.
We now, across HBO and Max, have close to 200 productions.
Wow.
And that's ranging scripted to unscripted, between 150 to 200 active productions. Just the massive scale of that is consuming. And that's not counting all the other things in development, right, that are going on. And you have other divisions across Warner Media also producing. So there's a lot of content going on. But basically, within HBO Max, when that project comes to us and we're trying to figure it out, and this is a perfect analogy. Last week, there was another project that showed up. And these days, what we say, okay, here's the script. Where on the entire planet are we going to shoot that script? There's over 100 incentives now around the world to choose from. And along with that has been the buildup of infrastructure around the world.
Oh, I think we just lost audio on Jay. Hang on one second. Lost audio. Ladies and gentlemen, we just have a little bit of a technical glitch here, Jay. I guess we kind of lost the audio there. I don't know if maybe your headset, if it's on Bluetooth, maybe try to switch to the other audio. Yeah, we can see you. We just can't hear you anymore, Jay. Nope. Yeah, I have no audio here. Nope. Still no audio. Ladies and gentlemen, just a little technical glitch here with the audio, but just bear with us one second. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get Jay Roewe back in just one moment. This is a great conversation that we are having, but we just want to make sure that we can see and hear Jay clearly. So we're going to bring him back into the broadcast right now. Let's see if this works. Hey, Jay.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yes.
Great,
Now
okay.
now that we're here, just ask you to tilt your camera a little bit more towards your right, not the other way. Yep. Sorry, the other. That's perfect right there. Okay. So.
Here we go.
Yes. We're back on. And so we were in the middle of a great conversation about where you choose to film your production.
Right.
Whichever.
So
Yes.
right. So what we're literally trying to decide at any given point is where do we put these things around the world? And so obviously an incentive have become a very big component of that, as I said, with over 100 of them around the world. But then what we're having to monitor these days is, are there stages available, right? Because of very incredible high demand for stages. Is there infrastructure? What's the crew situation in these places where we're filming? And then the other obvious things such as, well, what's the weather like? Is this a time of the year when we can shoot there? Um, and other political things that may be happening, right? In certain parts of the world, I mean, we have to monitor things politically. We were filming a series then in Chile, and things got there were some, besides COVID, some other problems, demonstrations on the ground. So these days you have to be sensitive to what's happening politically around the world, right? Even in our own country with demonstrations and so on and so forth. So we take all these things and we're trying to narrow them down. And typically what happens on any given project, we end up looking at 2, 3, 4 different places around the world and do comparisons to say, where do we really belong? Now, there may be instances where the filmmakers, you know, because of their own locale, maybe they don't want to shoot outside of New York or LA or London per se. Sometimes the story very much drives you to a certain location. Though obviously the film, it's, you know, part of the magic of the business is being able to shoot in different places and cheat and so on and so forth. COVID has had implications, obviously, where things are tough from a COVID standpoint. So we're taking all these factors in real time now. And that's what we do is we sit there with the producers and really try and figure out the best home for that project. And in the case of a television series, right, with a movie, you go in once, but a television series, that home may last for anywhere from 2, 3.
Oh, Jay, I think we may have lost audio one more time. It may again just be the headset that you have if it's Bluetooth. Nope, no audio yet. Yeah, we just kind of lost the. Yeah, let's try to reset and maybe see if we can get you on an alternate headset, maybe, or just with the camera audio, might help as well. Let's try that again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are definitely going to continue this conversation with Jay Roewe. It's going so well. And we're just getting into the thick of now what we talk about film and production incentives and how that's kind of driving that global business all over the world, which we definitely find is such an interesting part of this business. And, we want to tie this home to Miami eventually as well. And hey, Jay.
Hey, yeah, I'm coming through my phone, and when somebody calls me, we lose the connection. So that's the challenge.
That's what it is. So, okay, but understood.
You learn something every day in the new COVID world. So
yes, in the live streaming world, it's just like the live news world. Anything can happen. Exactly. So we just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, when somebody calls me. So nobody call me right now, please. Don't try and call me.
Anyone trying to reach Jay Roewe, please don't call me.
Don't call me. Yep. Exactly.
But
so we'll just reconnect if it happens again. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem at all. So, Jay, we were speaking about this idea of where to shoot and not only taking into factor, like you mentioned, there's over 100 different incentives all around the world, but there's also geopolitical issues and so many other things that go into choosing a location. So, what is a little bit of your process? Obviously, at some point, the script comes into play, right? Like, where is the story set?
Well, yeah, I think for us, and this is the history of HBO, and it's not to say that money is not an important issue. Money's always an issue. But I think one of the first things that always impressed me when I got to HBO was we would do these evaluations and we said, well, if you really want that vision to be real, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. And they said, well, can you do it for cheaper? And I go, yeah, I can do it for cheaper, but I don't know if it's going to be what you want. And so I think that's always been part of the process here is that at some point you can make it, you can always cut the budget, but then at what point are you hurting the vision or hurting the process? And I think that's probably one of the most interesting and challenging parts, certainly in terms of my career, is saying, well, what at the end of the day, I don't want to make the cheapest production. I'm trying to make the most cost efficient production. Okay, so I'm going to get the best bang for the buck. And at a certain point, you need to spend a certain amount of money, or your vision is not going to be realized. So I think
Yeah.
so much of what we do is trying to be as cost efficient as possible. Where's the money going to go the best? But at the same time, retain the vision and not compromise too much. And there
Mm.
was a story. We have a series called The Warrior, which we shot in South Africa a couple of years ago, which we're now it's a wonderful series. We're going to bring it back next year. But we literally did comparisons. We could shoot anywhere around the world. We looked at, I think it was 7 or 8 countries around the world. Going to the Far East, shooting here in the U.S., going to Canada, shooting in the state of Georgia, shooting in the UK, shooting in Romania, and for a number of reasons, South Africa really was that. It came down to South Africa versus Romania, and then people were a little reluctant to go to Romania for
Hmm.
decades on. And South Africa completely worked, and we were able to access people in the Far East. We were able to build very cost efficiently. There's obviously always political challenges in South Africa. We're having some issues actually with the incentives down there right now, but by
Mm.
and large, it worked. But that's the fun part, is that you've got this big, wide open palette these days, and it really is where am I going to realize this vision as strongly as I
Right.
possibly can, given all the
Mm.
other factors,
Right.
from that standpoint. So that's the fun
Yeah.
part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think getting to figure out this sort of like um, global picture, and it's almost like you're moving these chess pieces around to see where you can kind of connect. And in terms of what your job is, and you've spoken a little bit about this idea of incentives and being not necessarily the cheapest place, but the most cost efficient. How does a good solid incentive play into that factor when you're budgeting something?
Well, I think what I often say when I say people, because we get people still coming to us from different governments all the time and so on and so forth. And the reality is, if you quote unquote really want to be in the game, you need to have an incentive of some kind, because
Mm.
it's so much a part of the business. You don't need to have the best incentive, but it's really helpful to have incentive, because you're also, as a state or country, sending a message out to our industry that you are open for business and you want our business. And if you
Mm.
don't have an incentive, there's usually something behind that, and it's not always quite as welcoming that way. That's not to say we don't go show. And right now, Florida's a perfect example. We wish there was an incentive in Florida. There would be more production, and I think we said it would in Florida, but we still come to Florida and shoot anyway, because there's a lot of things that are going there. However, if Florida had an incentive, without question, there would be more productions showing up in Florida. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
make my pitch any more than that today at this conference, but I think everybody knows that. Everybody, and
Absolutely.
we've had good experiences that way. But
Yeah.
along with that, though, so the incentive is a big portion of what we do. But obviously, we're shooting in Florida right now. We've shot there before, with that incentive. So what goes along with that, and where my job has evolved into, is the relationship with the government, with the producers on the ground, all the production service companies on the ground, the stage situations around. And so it's become my job to help talk to these people, hear them, hear their pitches, and so on and so forth. And then if we do end up there, then because we've been very often, we're talking to the film commissioners, or we're talking to economic development people in the government. If we have problems, and COVID's been a perfect example where we needed to work with the governments, and because of myself working with our public affairs team, we were connected into governments around the world. It's been a natural transition for me to evolve into being this liaison with different government people, and other situations around the world. So it's
Mm.
kind of our business has evolved to this other level of really having to interact with government people in ways that are very integrated and tied. And I think the story that I often say when I talk to different people is, government often thinks about economic development as bricks and mortar, right? We're going to get that automobile factory, or we're going to get that software company, and they're going to hire all these people. They're going to, either build a building or rent a building or lease a warehouse. And we're going to have all these jobs that come there, and then that business is going to be there, hopefully for 5,
Mm.
10, 15, 20 years. Well, don't you, Mr. Government, want my $100 million TV series, or my $150 million TV series, or my $50 million TV series? We're going to come there. We may be there for years. We're going to employ hundreds of people. We're going to spend millions of dollars, at hotels and restaurants and all the same as a bricks and mortar business. And so people in government now realize that our business is as important. In fact, in some ways, you start to put the tourism halo around our business, we can potentially become an advertisement for your state, right, or country. And why not have a hit television series come there and become an advertisement for your state and country?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
case in point, and people have heard me talk about Game of Thrones. With Game of Thrones, we put Northern Ireland on the map for many people in the world. Right. Even before Game of Thrones, most people didn't realize, or many people didn't realize, there was a Northern Ireland and Ireland, right? They thought it was just Ireland, one big country. But and so we transformed a country the same way that Lord of the Rings did for New Zealand and Breaking Bad did for New Mexico. I mean, these successful TV series can transform places or bring attention to places in ways. Mayor of Easttown, southeastern Pennsylvania. What's that funny accent, right? All of a sudden, it's like,
Right. Right.
we've heard stories of people now showing up at the houses where we filmed Mayor of Easttown, right, at the doorstep. So
Right.
there's no question our business can become very kind of almost sexy from a tourism standpoint in combination with the money we're bringing. So I think we've evolved to not only bringing a film or television series, but we're bringing this business to your state or country. And so that's a lot of what I do now, is really have those conversations. That's really the realm that I play in on a day basis, is that business side of what we're doing and how we go about doing it.
And that's fascinating because, you covered so much in terms of what the global incentives mean and what they mean to the local regions. Obviously, I have to give a shout out to our own film commissioner, Sandy Leiterman, who put us together here in Miami-Dade County. And I know that, Miami-Dade County in Florida, as you mentioned, we don't have the strong incentives anymore at the state level. I know Sandy does have a program at the county level that's been working well for some of the smaller productions. But we do definitely see the benefit here from the tourism, from the media point of view, dating way back to the days of Miami Vice, right? And how that helped kind of form the modern day image of how people see Miami, from almost this like sleepy retirement community to this vibrant metropolis. And how shows like Miami Vice and obviously Ballers more recently were able to kind of give us a different view of what Miami's become, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's a walking advertisement. And when people talk about advertising these days, right? What is advertising? Advertising is transformed. You look at the streamers, right? We don't have ads. So where's the advertising from that standpoint? So even advertisers are realizing now, if they get their product into one of our shows, it becomes an advertisement for your product, right? So you have the placement in the shows and what that does. And then you have the show itself, where, again, case in point, something like Ballers or Mayor of Easttown, and a lot of shows where the environment we're filming becomes almost a character, right? And so, look at White Lotus, right? I mean, the Four Seasons Hotel in Maui has blown up because of White Lotus.
Right.
And, it was filmed there. I mean, obviously White Lotus was a generic hotel, but it's like, boom, all of a sudden it's just, it lights places up. And, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? I mean, I was sitting there with my wife watching the show, and she liked the show, but it was just torture for her because she just wants to be in Maui the whole time. So
right, absolutely.
These are very, very, our medium is very powerful that way. And people are starting to realize that. I mean, not that we didn't realize it before, but in the new world, right, in this content world, every one of these shows can be such an advertisement for so many people on so many levels.
Right. Especially, like you said, as we pivot more into the streaming world, right, where the traditional 30-second ad is quickly disappearing from the TV landscape, right? I know HBO has been out of that game because it's a subscription model either way, even before HBO Max. But now, it's so much important to sort of brand things within the story themselves, right? And I think that goes not only for products like, to use a local example, Bacardi or whatever, to the cities and the regions themselves that benefit from the windfall of tourism.
Right, exactly. I mean, social media has transformed marketing, and, our content business. This is a new way of thinking and doing things. And so, why not have a television show come to town and put your city on the map, or remind people of what a great city it is?
Right.
And so on. And when you tune in every night and you're watching that show in Florida, it's like, Florida. 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 Oh, I haven't been to Florida. Oh, we should go to Florida for our next vacation. And boom, it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now that the world little by little is opening up again and folks are moving around more, it makes all the more sense that this industry is incredibly powerful in that, nowadays as you know, there's screens everywhere. I mean, we're broadcasting live to a closed channel on a website, but people have Facebook and Twitter and they're chatting, and there's so many screens around us constantly, right? And we're just constantly immersed in content, essentially.
We're all interconnected. There's no question about that. But then how do you hold on to somebody's attention? And so, a scripted show that has you coming back week after week, right? That's very powerful in this day when content is fighting you in so many ways around you all the time. So
Yeah,
to have a great story or a series that goes on, I mean, that's the challenge today. It's like, oh, do I want to start watching that series? Because I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, again and again. So,
sure.
but that's that's our challenge. That's the challenge we have in front of us right now, is to keep delivering that quality content that's just going to be motivating for you to keep coming back and hang with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think HBO has always been about prestige, right? And we just had the Emmy run and all the wonderful things. So, how important it is to keep the level of quality that HBO is known for. As, like you said, there are so many eyeballs all over the world and so many distractions in terms of what you do.
Well, I think that's that's kind of what the ethos has been. It's why I was attracted here in the first place, was the quality of the people, the quality of the content, and so on. And I think as these billion-dollar content wars are kind of are out there right now, it's in the midst of all that. And I think that's the big thing today. Is it about the quantity or the quality? And you know what? We only have so many hours in the day. And so it's great that I can have a lot of choices, and we all need to have a lot of choices, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
part of the gift of digital, and all these things are in front of us. But at the end of the day, it's about quality time with quality people, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what we still, and our goal in the midst of even the 150, 200 shows we're doing, is we just want to retain the quality and do everything we can at the highest quality level. Sometimes it's a little bit harder because you're doing more shows, but
right.
at the same time, it's understanding what a filmmaker wants to do, what their vision is, and supporting them through the entire process, right? So it's supporting them through the script process, creating a good writer's room, hiring the right writers together, helping them through the production process. Where are we going to produce this thing? Where's it really the best place to produce this on the entire planet at this point? And then once you're finished, to really produce it, to market it, get it out, right?
Right.
There's so much coming out. How do you create a good buzz about something? It's not the way that it used to be. So I think we feel very fortunate, especially in a year like this, with everybody around. I mean, to have Mayor of Easttown kind of pop through, White Lotus to pop through. We've got Succession coming back, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Euphoria. These are tune-in shows, and I think that's how we at Warner Media and HBO, we're going to do. We want to keep having things that you just feel are really, really special. And we certainly feel they're special.
Right.
But it's a new world. Back in the early days at HBO, when I first got here, there was like HBO, and Showtime was even around at the beginning. And then there was Showtime.
Right.
There were a couple of others, but there's a lot of people doing great work right now. So
Yeah.
we just want to keep our standards as high as we possibly can, and support the people we're working with as best we can. That's who we are, and that's how we're going to continue moving forward.
No, absolutely. And congratulations on all the recent successes that you've had in all your productions. And, so I guess that comes down to, one of the questions I had here, which is, as an executive, as a former producer now, how do you measure success when you see something? Is it the accolades? Is it folks buzzing about it on social media? What is it that you say, wow, this was a job well done?
Well, I think success. I mean, I think it's one of the things about Hollywood. Sometimes it's like, well, how many awards did you win, and so on and so forth. And it's always nice to get those things, but I think from any creative process, to me, did you do the best that you possibly could as an individual as part of the process? Did we as a production do the best that we possibly can? And then at some point, things start to kind of they're beyond you. You're beyond your control. But I think when you're putting, and this is what's always motivated me about the creative process, there's so many decisions that have to be made. And it goes back to my music analogy. If I was going to put a performance together, you want to have the best performers on stage with you, right? Because when you're going to go to perform, you want people that are really high quality. And so I use that same metaphor through every one of our productions. Every single production is a custom designed, building business that we're putting together. And so what you're trying to do is put the best people together. And if you feel you've done the best that you possibly could, well, then that's success. And then beyond that, hopefully the accolades come, and sometimes they come and sometimes they don't. But
Mm,
as long as you've done your best, that's all you can hope for. So, I think if you're good at what you do over a certain length of time, this, hopefully you'll win an award. And I feel very fortunate within the scope of HBO. We've won just so many awards through the years. There was a span where, we literally won Best Television Movie for like over 20 years in a row. So that it certainly feels good.
mm.
And you certainly want to be around people that appreciate and understand that. So it's nice to get some accolades, but at the end of the day, it's about doing the best you can, and then hopefully being in a place where people appreciate that and recognize that. And
Right.
that's how I look at success.
Now, as a production person, and we do that too as filmmakers, are there things you notice about a production or about a film, or just when you're watching a piece of content that others might not notice? Whether it's certain look, a feel, art direction, a location, like, man, we got how did they shoot there, kind of thing.
Well, it's funny when I go into a movie theater, which I look forward to going to those again or watch anything. Yeah, I'm constantly analyzing it tonally. Why does it work? Why is it not working? What's the script like? What is the acting like, and so on. And part of it is we're watching so much these days. I think we're all getting better instincts about that. But certainly as a production person, what you're always trying to understand is, why did it work? Like, what really made it work?
Hmm.
And certainly when I see things inside of HBO that work, you start every project wanting it to be the next great thing, and you aspire to that every single time. But it is funny to see when things come together and they do click. Why? And by and large, it starts at the top. It starts with people that have a clear vision about what they're doing. Their vision is clear, they're communicative. And when I see a production come together and the dynamic is high levels of communication, high levels of people being in sync, chances are the reality of that actually coming out well just increases. Now, every once in a while, I'll have a show where everybody gets along and it all works and so on and so forth. But chances are, if there's people where the communication isn't working all that well, or people are out of sync, it just makes for a tougher process. And it makes it, by and large, the vision often doesn't get to the level that you thought it was going to.
Hmm.
So there's no magic formula, but again, that's why from the very beginning, trying to get the right people, the right producers on board, every show is a custom made group of people coming together to try and realize that vision.
Hmm.
And every hire is important. And then trying to make sure that people, you can, again, often on a show, you got to look for a production designer. There's lots of production designers that are great at what they do, but who's the right production designer who happens to be available right now, which is a challenge these days because there's so much work going on, who's right for this show? So that's what we're trying to do in the day is to create that team that really is the best possible team for that show. And so hopefully that's what we're doing, is trying to bring the right people together and encourage them to hire the right people for what we think is going to be the best thing for the process.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because a lot of it should be instinctual and creative in terms of who's best for the project. Now, as you mentioned, it could be hard because maybe that great art director is not available, and so it becomes more of a practical decision in terms of who can we get that can actually do this and who's actually also available, right?
Well, and this is also where the relationships come up. I think we've worked with a lot of people through the years, and we've had some very positive experience with people. And yes, they can go work at another streamer down the street or whatever, but when they come to HBO, we're going to treat them a certain way. We're going
Mm.
to treat them with respect. We're going to give them support as best we can. And when you've been to battle a few times with a producer or so on and so forth, and we've been through it, it's good to know that people have your back. So those relationships, and then when, if I go to a town and I'm trying to put a good crew together, well, I want to hire the best producer in town because people will want to come and work for that producer. So those are all the kinds of business decisions that you're trying. I call them business decisions, but those decisions that you're making, which at the end of the day are going to help make the best possible product. So
Mm.
we're always trying to hire the best right people for each project as best we can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you could always tell, like I said, in the end product. And I think that, now we are going to take just a couple of questions,
Sure.
from Q&A, because, this time has actually flown by and I wish we had more time. But I definitely, obviously a lot of our audience being sort of international, Rita, who's an Indian filmmaker as well, is kind of asking about the international picture in particular, and regions like India, for example, that have such a robust industry of their own with Bollywood. Are you able to sort of tap into that crew base and things when you're doing internationally? As you mentioned, it's all about also hiring a very smart local line producer that knows the crew. But are there regions where just naturally they have really strong crew bases and places that you feel more confident in going to versus others?
Yes, there's no question there are hubs right now when we go to film. Los Angeles, New York, UK, Australia, Eastern Europe, Hungary, South Africa, where there's a long history, in particular, of people from our country coming and filming. Now, case in point, take something like India. I think the reality is, in fact, we were on a call yesterday because we may be filming something in India next year, and a lot of people want to move into India. I think the moment we're at right now is really interesting from an international standpoint. One, because we can go and film in countries in ways that we never did before. We've been filming in China. I mean, we filmed in India before. We filmed all around the world. I think now we're getting to a much much more level playing field, where even like something like going to India, which 10 years ago was like, how are we ever going to shoot in India? Whereas like, we had a call yesterday with a production service company, and there's certain dynamics of shooting in India, but it was pretty clear. Maybe you need to plan for things a little bit more. You need to be sensitive to the monsoon season, but it's not that different shooting in India than anywhere else in the world. But you need to know people that know the culture and the unique qualities or challenges of shooting in it's like that. So we want to hire the best production service company, best producers we can, and they're going to help us through that. So we do look at the world now in that shape, manner, and form. So we do literally look everywhere in the world, and it's every place is under consideration now in ways that we didn't before. So that's number one. Number two is because of the internet and all of us being connected and the platforms and wanting to get all this material out to the 178 to 180 different regions around the world. People want your local content more than ever as well. And so for you as local filmmakers, and we're interested in that local content, because if we're going to launch our service in India or different places, we want to have local content on there as well as international content. And look at some of the, I think COVID also exposed us to some incredible content around the world. There's the Call My Agent series out of France, which is, or The Heist out of Spain, right?
Right.
These are two world-class series that originated and actually had some energy and wherewithal going in their own countries. And once you put them up on the international platform, people go, doesn't matter what language it's in, it's great content. So we're now at a point where these platforms are able to take this local content and give you an international platform. So more than ever, we're looking for local content, and we're leaning into local content in a way that we never have before. So it's great from a local filmmaker having now a worldwide platform to step onto. And it's also great for us as international filmmakers to have a palette where we can go around the world and do world-class productions. So it's a great time, both from that local angle, working both ways.
Yeah, and that's an amazing point. Like you said, you see the quality of some of this more regional content kind of blowing up now because of technology and the way things move now, and being able to be exposed to it. But I think when you do see these sort of breakout shows that are regional, and this is obviously a kudos to your work and to your company, is that I often hear this feels like an HBO show, even though it's not.
Right.
And what they mean by that is that at a certain level of quality. And we're starting to see that from more regions now.
Yeah, and we're very excited because we actually, even pre kind of worldwide distribution platform, we have a history here at Warner Brothers and HBO of filming around the world. We had HBO Asia, we had HBO Latin America, we had HBO Europe. Warner Brothers was doing productions around the world. So now what we're really looking forward to in the next few years is being able to take the original content we were doing before and now actually elevate it and get it up onto our HBO Max platform as we release that around the world. So it's a very, very exciting time for filmmakers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this,
Content creators, as we would
yes.
say. I still like filmmakers. I think they're
Yes.
filmmakers, but okay, they're creating content. So
Absolutely, yeah. We're all filmmakers, and no matter what the platform or no matter what the story, even if it's episodic or even if it's a limited series, I think you're still making a film.
well, and that's a very good point. Let me, because I do think from a creative standpoint, what's really interesting these days, and I put my creative hat back on, you know, you have more forms of content. I almost call them genres, whether it's a scripted, year over year series or a limited series. I mean, look at the limited series this year at the Emmys. I mean, that's probably one of the strongest categories ever. And there's something to be said about limited series these days, right?
Mm,
Do I have to get myself embedded in a series that's year after year? Sometimes you do, but to actually have to go or have to go to have a limited series that I can, 6, 7, 8 episodes and I'm done. Like a giant feature film. You
mm,
still have the 2.5 hour, film model. You then have documentaries. Look what's happened in documentaries in the past few years,
mm.
right? I mean, just
Yeah.
especially during COVID, just unbelievable.
Mm,
Reality shows of every single form of you can imagine at this point, right?
mm,
And short pieces. It could be a 2-minute piece, a 5-minute piece, a 10-minute short, or whatever. You have webisodes. You can put an entire television series just up on the internet and just as your own webisode. So there's so many ways for you to put things out when you have a story to tell. And I think this is really important for creative people, is figure out the best place where that story belongs. I often see people sometimes trying to say, well, I want to make a TV series. And then you hear about what it is. It's like, well, that's actually just a 2-hour movie. So don't try and force a 2-hour movie into a 10-episode TV series. Don't do
mm,
that. It doesn't work.
mm.
But because you have the ability to do this, and if you have a creative project that you're working on, figure out the best form for that, and then go to that form. And that's what I
Mm.
think so wonderful now, is that all these forms almost have their own platforms and industries behind them. So,
Yeah.
but think about how your story, where it belongs. I think
Yeah.
that's really important to the creative process.
Absolutely. And obviously I have to say that's on behalf of myself, the Miami media and film market. Obviously Sandy Lyerman on our advisory board, Susan Sims, our liaison out there. We love having you guys in Florida and in Miami. And we definitely hope to see more of you guys down here. And some of the great productions that we've been honored to have. But we're excited about the future as well, and we're excited about everything that you're doing, and we're excited that you did this panel today, because now you're officially an MMFMer.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to the state of Florida. All those people mentioned, Susan and Sandy and everything. I will tell you, even though we have ongoing conversations about hopefully getting incentives back in place, the infrastructure is there, the crews are there, the talent is there. You do world-class productions, and we know that, and we're very confident about, when we come to Florida, that it's going to be a great production. So
Mm.
get that incentive tweaked, and you'll have that much more stuff coming to your state. But in the meantime, we're going to still come there and film and have a great experience. And we appreciate all the support of the industry and all the support of the people and the filmmakers and people like yourself. So
Oh,
thank you so much, Jose.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Jay, and thanks so much for taking the time. We're going to take another quick break today, but this has been a really great session, and we're so excited by what's coming up. We have a great series on In Treatment, which is all about screenwriters creating that next draft of their story and pitching it and hopefully getting it on screen. We're also going to be ending the day with our big keynote. Bronze Studios co-founder Brenda Gilbert will be here as well later today to talk about all the great work that Bron's doing. We love all the great work that Jay's doing. We love everything that HBO is doing. We love that MMFM can still bring you a conference virtually, and we're going to keep making it happen. So thanks again, Jay, and we'll see the rest of you in just 15 minutes. Thank you guys so much.
All the
Alrighty.
best. Bye-bye.
Likewise. All right, so there you have it, folks. That was an awesome panel, and we're so excited because this is going to continue. So don't go away, because in just 15 minutes, we are going to come back with another panel In Treatment with some great writers from LA, Miami, and other places talking about developing your material. And then, of course, our last conversation of the day with Brenda from Bronze Studios. That's going to be amazing. So stay tuned. I want to just take a quick moment to also thank all our sponsors: Miami-Dade County, its Board of Commissioners, Cam McCall, Miami Oportunidad, King Events, Stage 10, of course, and the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, the GMCVB. We'll be back in just a few.